Okay, welcome everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed the lunch break and had a pretty nice lunch. Welcome to the first session. What? Much better now. Thanks, Evgeny. He calmed the whole room down. That's pretty much impressive. Okay, what I wanted to say is welcome back from the lunch break, and that I hope everybody had the opportunity to have a nice lunch. And here you are in the first session of the sidetrack after the lunch break. The session is named Building a CAP Application with Latest Best Practices and AI. And the presenters today are going to be Lukas Thijs and Robin de Silva Yasingne. And if you look in the agenda, there were planned to be more presenters, but due to sicknesses, we had to reduce the number of speakers, but not the amount of exciting content, of course. And with that, I would like to hand over to Lukas, who will start. Lukas, the stage is yours.
Do you understand me now? Okay. Yeah. Why am I here? I'm working in SAP Ariba, so core application development with an SAP. We have a pretty huge project, and if you have in any means been following Ariba, you might have heard that we are doing the next gen Ariba. And we released the first GA version in February this year. So when we started this, we had a lot of different things to do. We collected requirements, we built stuff, we built stuff. We had some change in target, we did build stuff. And we came up with a very tangled code base. So we had a lot of stuff mixed in, mixed there. And the situation was not really, really good. And what do you do if you have a project that is kind of late and you have a bad quality of code? Right, you take more developers and put it into a project. That never, ever failed. So as we were in a situation that our situation is not really good, we had to come up with a way on how to improve it. As we were already using CAP Java, but we have had some issues. We checked, okay, how can we actually get this better? Like what we did, for sure, could not have been good CAP Java. So if you're in a lucky situation that you know people from CAP, you then go to the CAP team and ask, hey, could you tell us on how we can do a CAP much better? And there we had the lucky situation that we have this great CAP team here. And they were able to tell us, hey, let's try this out. We have some ideas. Let's create an example project. Let's put everything in that is really awesome, that's really cool, the new great stuff we have in CAP, to come up with a kind of example project we can use to skill up our team, that we as a team can build really good stuff in CAP Java and not take current gen code and do current gen code in CAP Java, which is not to be recommended. Like if you want to build CAP, you should build following the best practices. And we're now going to have a look on what to do, on how we did it. So the very first thing you need to do if you want to do a really good CAP application is you need to come up with your data model. Because as you probably all know, a core component of CAP is the CDS. Like if you don't have any CDS file, I can guarantee you your CAP service will not work at all in a meaningful way. So how do you create a good CDS file? Obviously, you could ask AI, generate me a CAP CDS file, do whatever, but that might not be the best result. So actually, you first need to understand the domain you really want to model. So obviously, there are some tools to do this, like domain-driven design, and there are also different ways to come to the model. We don't deep dive that too much in this talk, but there are also talks and also conferences on this, so I won't go too deep. But we kind of came up with, okay, this is our domain knowledge. Now let's model it in a way we can actually implement it in CAP Java, or CAP in general. So what we did is we took our domain, and this is a kind of simplified version. Obviously, it's a sample project to ramp up this team. So we did not want to come up with each and every complexity of hundreds, thousands of millions, whatever. So yeah, we came up with a pretty simple data model. And we modeled it, we did some correction, we checked this as experts, we adjusted it again. And when we had the feeling, okay, this is something we can work with, we started with the first increment to actually put it into CDS. what you do is you create the most simple version of just putting all the fields of the main entities in this document. And then you will notice you have something that is like an association. So when you say, okay, I have a requisition, and then you notice, oh, I have a requisition item, you obviously want to also model the items. And a good point that has proven during this process is start with one entity and do all your association, all your composition first as a pretty minimal stuff, like define the name, a key, and that's it for the time being. And then step by step, you go to every entity and define all the required information. And really start minimal to get it working. And as you come over, you will notify, okay, there is something more I need to add, and you will just add it incrementally. So it will not be big bang, and you will be able to actually model what you need. And what we also focused on is modeling the core business entity, like making sure in the schema CDS, we really have the core functionality. We don't have crazy amounts of annotation. We don't have crazy amount of technical fields no one actually wants to use or see on any UI. Really model the core business entity in the schema. Then, obviously, you want to see the application is running. So what is the most consistent way to test a CAP application that has nothing at all besides the data model? You can run CDS data, which will generate you sample data. That is already quite nice. I can quickly open how it would look like, something like this. But actually, when you do this, it will not know that unit of measures should look like this, but it will generate some random string. So to make it actually nice and usable, the best thing you can do is ask AI, hey, I have this generated test sample data. It has the right data format, but it has not meaningful data. Can you please replace it with meaningful data? And AI is very, very good in understanding, based on the CDS and the generated file, what is supposed to be in there. And this pretty much is one shot, and the data is almost perfect. So this is really good. So nothing too bad here. When you then have the data schema, you actually want to see it somewhere. So the easiest way to get it visible is you do some UI. Now, as we want to do simple sample application, and anyway, we in SAP using Fiori elements to render our UIs, we wanted to have a Fiori elements application that can be used for the demo purpose. So what is the most useful way to do if you don't want to invest any human developer building some nice UI, but you want to have a usable UI? You ask AI, hey, vibe code me this UI source. So it was able to pretty much generate the whole annotations of the style. And I think with 3 or 4 adjustments, it was really nice to see, and we can have a quick look at it in case it will work. Not yet started. That's the fun if you're working with a Windows machine. It takes almost some time. So yeah, I will come back to the once it's booted up.
I have it like ready.
You have it ready?
Yeah.
You want to switch over?
Yeah. I shared? Did I?
Not yet. Yeah. So with pretty much very few implementation, you can have a working UI. You can click items. You can do and you can do some things like add to cart, which is also generated with comes then with a pop-up. You can enter amount, add to cart, and yeah, you have a basic UI working. So again. Now, that's the part probably most of you have already seen somewhere, already done somewhere, like modeling CDS is not that new. Even focusing on domain, probably many of you have already tried some way of modeling your domain. So that's not a new thing. But what is actually something that's really nice you can do with CAP Java is, with CAP in general, like this is CDS. CDS is common across CAP Java and CAP Node. So you can do most of the stuff the same way in Node. So what we have done is you have the situation. that you have a header entity with some items, and you want to add a new item. And the new item should have an auto increment ID. And then you might delete an entry, you might add a new one, and you want to do this in a kind of automated way. And you can fully model this in CAP. Like you can just say like something like this. And with CAP expression, you're able to write very advanced scripts to do this. Like you can do some coalesce with max, and you will always get the right number. That now, if you are really senior or really experienced with CAP, you will notice that at default is not a standard annotation in CAP. Now, the great thing with CAP is, if you need syntax that is not there yet, you can easily add it yourself. So what we have done with this is we have implemented a custom handler for the default that pretty much checks for the annotation and then just runs the expression handling of CAP to actually calculate a value. So what we do in the item number is we don't do any coding to calculate the item number, besides telling, hey, if you have this default field, evaluate the CAP expression in this context and take the value and put it into this field, which is something we have used quite a lot across our application because it's really nice to define an application. And we have some use cases where we copy things from one item to another item, where we can just do the association to the item and get via the default all the values copied we need, which is really, really nice. Then what else did we do? We used expression for something like status handling. And let me pause this. In Ariba, we have kind of a complex way to calculate item status and header status. And if you write this in code, it's quite ugly and it's not really portable. And it is always executed unless you do some crazy complicated stuff. The great thing you can do with CAP when you do this in the CDS is if you use a format like OData that has filtered properties, like you will not have all, but only a projection. The easiest thing is if this CDS is run as a expression, it will only be run if the result is actually in your data set. And it will be run in a quite optimized way. So you don't need to have all data transferred from the database to your application server. Then you filter stuff and find out actually you did not need to replicate any data at all. So when you run the query in the database, you can pretty much optimize this down to having the status immediately available. There's some minor quirks, like you need to really think how to correctly model it in a performed SQL. So still, you cannot turn off your brain, but it's very powerful and gives you a lot of options to do this. Okay. Then obviously, we don't only want to have data available, but we also want to have some logic available. So we can do stuff with our application and not only look at it because it looks nice, but most applications need some action. So what we have is status. And if we quickly go back to the schema, we have an annotation on the status field that is a flow, which means we have some automatic status transfer handling when you change the status field. And we then have a handler on the status flow that says, okay, you are only allowed to do these changes. Like when you go from card status to submitted status, it will trigger the submit event. When you go from card to cancelled, it will trigger the discard event. And if you go from submitted to cancelled, it will trigger the cancel event. And you can then implement handler like this in add to card that will be then run on the add to card event, or you can implement it before submit handler. So when the submit event would be triggered, it first checks if this condition is true. In this case, it checks if there's an item because you should not be able to request to submit the requisition that does not have any item. So yeah, you can do pretty easy logic to get it working in this way. And really, the goal of this is to have as little actual code and have as much declarative code in your CDS as possible. So it's easier to maintain, it's easier to review. And obviously, it's also easier for AI because if it's expressive in a declarative way, AI can easily understand what it's doing. If you have hundreds of Java code, that's not that easy for AI to understand. We tried. Now, we have the situation that we not only have one persona, but we have different personas interacting with the same service. So we have a casual buyer that puts some things in the shopping cart and then order it. We have then some approvers that are the owner of the cost center or something that decides, yeah, you're allowed to order this. No, you cannot order this. And then we have some more administrative users that do some cleanup in case something goes wrong. Like if the supplier says, I cannot deliver it, do someone to clean up your data. So we have pretty much these three personas. And the best way to do this in CAP is you actually create different services. So when we have a quick look on our folder structure, so we have different persona, different services persona. So we have one service for the admin persona. That is pretty much unchecked. It checks like, are you admin? And then you can do pretty much anything. Then we have the approver service. The approver service is bound in a way that it's really supposed to only see the things that are in approval and only do approve or reject action. They don't need to change everything. They don't need to delete everything. They should just have a focused view on it. And then we have the buyer. Obviously, this is the most casual user, so we have very limited restriction on what they can do. But obviously, they need to be able to put stuff in their cart and actually order it. So we really implemented every service for this. So we have one easy endpoint. We can build the authentication against this endpoint. And we have pretty clear separation of concern. And we can have different checks, different logic for validation of all different things. So things that you can do in one service, you might not be able to do in another service. And this is pretty easy to build out of the logic itself. So when we now an approval handler and we want to approve, we need to, out of this requisition, create a purchase order. But as the service is only handling the requisition part, we somehow need to get it to the purchase order domain. And to get it there, you might have heard about the Kalesi pattern. We should act as if it would be our own service. So we implemented it. And if you do a synchronous call to another service, this is quite bad. And to get rid of this synchronous complexity and to be able to carve out the purchase order domain correctly, we have then implemented a CAP outbox pattern. I think that will hand over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Share. Okay, so I will continue with the code that Lukas has just showed. So what he has explained is that, yeah, in this scenario, you want to call one domain in your project from the other domain. Yeah. So here in this case, from the approver domain, you want to call the what was it? Order domain. Yeah, right. And yeah, as said, normally you would just have injected an instance of that domain service and just call it directly. Yeah, but this is like especially not a good idea if you later carve out, for example, the order service or domain from your application and put it to a different application or different microservice. Yeah, this is the so-called late cut microservices pattern. And I have a small picture or diagram for that. So we have here the approver service on the left-hand side, and right-hand side the processing server for service for processing orders. Yeah, and you can see here the red arrow is basically the direct call for this ready to order event when you just said, okay, card is ready, everything approved. Now I want to order, and this would call it directly. Yeah, in the same JVM, same transaction. And anything that happens on the right-hand side would also basically happen, yeah, in the same transaction. This is at first sight convenient, yeah, because, well, you call it like as if you would call a normal method on a Java object. Everything is good, it works, yeah. But once you go this late cut microservices route and say, okay, now I want to carve out this thing, and it starts to be another JVM on somewhere else on the network, and you call it, and it might not be available, yeah, or it might be slow or whatever, and your whole approval process would fail if the other right-hand side is not available, yeah. And then you need to start to think about
high availability of that service, or for some failover scenarios, and so on and so on. So if you go that route and start to build your applications like that, you get something that is called like the distributed monolith. Yeah, it's basically the worst of both worlds. Yeah, monolithic world and microservice world. Yeah, tight coupling, but high effort, high maintenance cost because you have a lot of services, deployables, and so on. So you basically, in practice, you don't want to do this. Yeah. So therefore, we have come from the CAP side with the outbox pattern. It's not our invention, but we are now providing an outbox. And with that, the picture looks a little bit different. Yeah. So on the approver side, it's basically nearly the same. Yeah. We can also switch to the code again. Yeah. The only difference is that you don't call or emit this event, yeah, on the original service, but on the outboxed version of that service. This line 57 is crucial here. Yeah. So you wrap your original service in an outboxed version of it. And by that, the event that you emit is not directly delivered or emitted on this original service, but on the outbox. And once this is successfully delivered to the outbox, the transaction on the left-hand side for the approver is happy. Yeah? It's not important whether the processing service is available or not, or answering quick or fast or whatever. We just said, okay, we give it to the outbox, and the CAP framework and the CAP outbox takes care of delivering it. Yeah, we can basically be sure that it eventually will be delivered. Maybe not in the first try because the service is not available or whatever. But yeah, we as the framework take care of it. So, and then on the other hand, or other side, the processing service, we have like a worker that works on the outbox and basically selects the entries and sees, okay, there was an event for the processing service. I will emit it on the service. And in case the operation is successful, yeah, the entry from the outbox is deleted. And the processing service has basically done the business operation it had to do. Yeah. If anything goes wrong, for example, some other remote calls or whatever, the entry is kept in the outbox for a next try. And we have a maximum number of tries. And once this is exceeded, some manual interaction is needed from an administrator to basically, fix the situation. Yeah, so this is a lot more robust pattern, and also basically removes a lot of burden from an operative point of view for your application. So you can be sure that everything works eventually, like not instantly and in real time and consistently, like you had it in one transaction, but eventually the system will be in a good state. Yeah, so this was about the outbox pattern. And was there anything left from your side? Okay, good.
Then I think we could do some Q&A.
Any questions in the room?
You first. When I emit a message to the outbox, and you said there's a retry mechanism, and let's say this cannot be done 10 times, and then the system says, okay, it can't deliver this. Can I react on these situations that I see a message cannot be transmitted to a service?
Yeah, this is a good point. I basically forgot to show something in the demo that you ask. at least in non-productive scenarios. Oh, wait, let me share. For non-productive scenarios, you can use the CAP developer dashboard, where you can have an overview about the outbox. And then, yeah, these are like in the current application, we have 2 outboxes. And if some event cannot be delivered, then you have it here in the upper table listed, and not pretty sure if you can see an error message, but at least you can see this has not been delivered, and you have this and that attempts. And for production scenarios, it could be that we have something based on OpenTelemetry. There, I'm not sure. But if not, you could also write your own instrumentation if you don't have it yet. But this is like a developer tool. Yeah. But in general, it's possible.
In the slide where you showed the architecture, you mentioned Kafka in between, but that is a SAP internal use case. Are you aware, like, is event mesh usable in outside SAP, or what would be the like integration if you really split into or if you split your application into microservices?
I showed Kafka. Let's check.
Yes, there was a Kafka mention.
Check. Oh, close the files. So in general, I cannot tell, yeah, because I'm always a bit confused about all the different messaging technologies we have. Sorry about that. In general, I think from the CAP Java team, we recommend Kafka. Yeah.
Can use also from.
Yeah. In CAP, it's basically technology. Yeah.
Agnostic.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's agnostic, and you emit an event, and you have some kind of messaging technology bound to your application, and we take care that the event reaches like all the subscribers, and yeah.
But maybe someone else knows. Would be the question: what is the best practice for like partner and customer applications for the messaging?
We have also messaging related with regard to outbox and task scheduling. We have a session today, and there you can meet the experts.
Good point.
Other questions in the room? Okay, if not, do we have Thomas? Do we have a question in the chat?
He's not in this one.
Okay, then if there are no further questions in the room, then thank you a lot, Robin and Lucas. I always confuse the names. Okay, great session, interesting content. Thanks for showing how you built Ariba with these nice features. Thanks, have a nice day. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.